All right, fun one today. I've got Vice President of Product here at Attack Interactive, Stephen Thiel, and we are talking about something that deserves more nuance than it normally gets, and that is the delicate balance between a HubSpot onboarding and HubSpot implementation. Stephen, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
All right, give it to us. Talk to us like we're 10 years old. Okay. What's the difference between HubSpot onboarding and HubSpot implementation?
Yeah, for sure. So HubSpot onboarding is typically going to be your fastest approach to getting up and running with HubSpot. You probably aren't coming from another CRM. Maybe you have data in spreadsheets. It's a pretty, you want to get up and running as quickly as possible, get your data in there, hit the ground running, and you might worry about cleaning data up, adding on integrations and more like custom setup down the road. Implementation, you're typically coming from another CRM. The data is probably not clean. You're going to want to go through a process of making sure all your associations are right, and that we're kind of starting off from a strength and structure approach, and maybe like, hey, I know I've had a CRM for the last like 3-4 years. I don't really like it. I want to build it the right way now. And then we go more the custom implementation route.
Okay, so let's break it down. Let's start with onboarding. If I'm hearing you right, onboarding, which is definitely step one of anything, right? It be onboarding and then implementation a lot of times. But step one with onboarding, it's typically teams that are going to be very active and involved inside of HubSpot that just kind of need the skeleton built. And then they're going to kind of, fill in the canvas however they need to. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, for sure. Whether it's Marketing Hub, Sales Hub, Service Hub, Ops Hub, Content Hub, they just want to get up and running as quickly as they can. They know they need a CRM, and they know they need to get in there. They need to be able to work contacts, work deals, work their pipelines as quickly as possible. And so they just want the base structure put in. They want their any data coming in from spreadsheets. They want maybe 1 or 2 basic pipelines set up, some few custom properties. Then they'll get their feet wet, and they might come back and say, okay, like, we kind of know how we want to use the tool now, and then they might go into more of like a more custom implementation route.
Yeah, and as an agency, what's really important for us is to recognize that somebody who's in onboarding, their priority and their focus is usually speed, right? Like, we want to get in here and move quickly. And so they want a company that can go in, create their instance, utilizing best practices with not necessarily as much customization, right?
Yeah, for sure. They typically want to get up and running in 30 days or less. They want to be they want to get in there, get their data in there. They might down the road say, hey, now we want to go and integrate PandaDoc and other like software tools, Zoom Info, and build on what they have in there, build in more automation. But they just need to get up and running and as quickly as they can. Speed is typically the approach there, and just covering the fundamentals.
Yeah, so even just due to the speed and simplicity, this is a more inexpensive route for anyone to go. We get up in HubSpot, and then we can kind of figure it out. God knows there's a million videos in the HubSpot library to try and get you to kind of learn it yourself. Now, we've seen a lot of companies, especially smaller, the mid-market, definitely want that route. They want to save money. They'll kind of, they'd rather invest in their own team learning as opposed to investing in a company, setting it up and doing it for them. Now let's move over to the custom implementation, because I think this is what we encounter a lot. And I also should say, before we dive into this, I think when the vernacular is not explained right to the client, there's a very big misnomer on onboarding versus custom implementation. And that can get a lot of people in trouble. And because onboarding is, like we said, fairly inexpensive, and you can get up and running fairly quick. Custom implementation, to be able to build a CRM out the way you need it to be built based on all of the data you have, your team and all that is more complicated, and that comes with a longer timeline and typically a higher price tag. So let's dive into implementation and what companies are more likely to need to go further than onboarding and need a real custom implementation.
Yeah, for sure. I think on the custom implementation route, I think we definitely tend to see that more in the mid-market to enterprise sectors. They typically do have a CRM in place, whether they're going from Salesforce, Zoho, Insightly, Pipedrive. It doesn't really matter. They typically have something in place. They've been using it for a while. For various reasons, they don't like it, and they've made that decision to shift over to HubSpot. The difficulty there a lot of the time is these other, while there are marketplace integrations in place for some of these CRMs, they all have their limitations. And there are typically always ends up being data that they want to get out of their current CRM that they can't. And so these take a lot longer because we are having to go in and either build APIs to pull the data out of their current CRM into HubSpot, or we're having to like go in and manually export tons and tons and tons of CSV files and then do VLOOKUPs and make sure like all their associations are right. And because they've already had these systems in place, they typically know that their data needs to get cleaned up some. How every CRM handles data hygiene and how they handle duplicate data entries on the contact and company side is completely different. And so we do typically kind of go through like a normalization, strategy with them, and we'll clean it up to make sure that they're getting like the freshest HubSpot instance possible. They typically, if they're going to custom implementation route, they probably have other systems in place that may or may not need custom API integrations, especially if they're going more on like the ERP, MRP route, and they need to be able to push and pull data out of HubSpot to those or to other internal systems that they have, or they have really complex, automation needs, whether that's on the marketing or sales or service side, or just other integrations that we need to pull in to be able to automate like the sending of documents, contracts, intent data, lead scoring. So there's a lot more that goes into a custom implementation, which again, typically is going to have like a 3 to 6 month timeline on it. So these are companies that are okay, like knowing like we're buying HubSpot today. We know it's probably going to be 3 to 6 months before like our team is actively in there using it, but they know when they get in there, everything is set up the way they want it to, custom to their business.
Yeah. And I think that, even to the 3 to 6 month timeline, the integrations like that, those are, I don't want to say more extreme, but those are definitely more involved implementations. I feel like I've seen even small sales teams, like they go beyond the cookie cutter onboarding, right? They need their CRM customized differently. They have different properties that matter. They have a different pipeline process, so they need different workflows based on, how complicated their whole sales process is. So I definitely, I've obviously seen some of those bigger implementations, but I also have seen some custom implementations that don't take as long, but are just more uniquely built for a company and built by a company who understands HubSpot like us.
Yeah, for sure. I think especially when we're talking more of like those single hub onboardings, that is like just an implementation of a marketing hub or a sales hub. There are, sales teams are more advanced now than they really have ever been, and they have a lot of tools that they're kind of using as part of their sales playbook. And they know like, hey, we know a basic pipeline is not gonna cut it for us, and then we do need to be able to, build in approvals into our pipeline, or we need to be able to push from sales to their CX team and have a smooth like onboarding and handoff process. Or they've gone down the route before of using tools like ZoomInfo, Apollo, and like they want to be able to customize how data comes into HubSpot and how who and what gets classified as an SQL. So there are definitely a lot of use cases there where we can execute on a custom implementation a lot faster, especially when working with in this example, a sales team that knows what they want and what works for them, and just kind of wants to bounce ideas off an agency like us that has been doing that for a while and can help them get that, like we always say, like paint the promised land for us.
Okay. So let's simplify this. Well, let's talk directly to somebody who's about to purchase HubSpot. Okay. They see this onboarding number, what it costs for onboarding, and that sounds nice. That sounds like manageable. And they see this custom implementation number, and that seems a little higher. Seems like a little bit more of an investment. Talk to me about who is right for onboarding. First, let's just start there. Who needs that onboarding?
I think everyone needs onboarding, but what onboarding means to everyone is going to be a little bit different. There's guided onboarding, and then there's more of like the white hat onboarding and white glove onboarding that we do, like where we are doing everything for you, and then we are going to train you on everything that we did so that your team can kind of hit the ground running from day one. But stepping back a bit, I'd say onboarding is typically going to be more for that small to mid-market company. They're either coming from a CRM that in like a Salesforce that probably integrates really well, and we can just say pull that data through an integration. They don't have complex needs, at least initially, because they might have an internal champion who's going to run with it once they get the basics set up.
Yeah, my 3-year-old, one of the things he'll do is he always wants to like take off his seatbelt or whatever. I can do it my own self. I can do it my own self. So I really feel like that, like, very simple onboarding is for those companies that want to be able to do a lot of those customizations on their own. And then, so, and I like that you said what you did about kind of our approach in that white glove onboarding, because like, even as much as we try to set something up as, standard and best practices, like there's still something about every company that is unique. And I feel like you always have to understand a business and what makes them, different from all the others, and then be able to customize their HubSpot instance to them. And I guess for implementation, that's kind of like doing that on steroids at a much bigger scale, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like you mentioned earlier, implementation is always going to include, that aspect of onboarding, but then we're going that much further and building in either the custom dev that they need, or we're building in all those, integrations and automation and setting up, workflows and sequences. So the implementation route, again, is typically what we see is going to be more that like mid-market to enterprise side, that they are comfortable knowing it's going to be a little bit before they get in there, but they want to make sure HubSpot is, that's the beauty of HubSpot. So many great tools, but how every company uses, HubSpot is completely different. Yeah, you have your fundamentals, but the implementation is different for every company, every industry. Their use case is never the same.
Yeah. And that's why I feel like we always hear from people who are like, HubSpot was showing me these videos. So like, I don't want to learn how to do it. I want somebody who knows what they're doing to just do it for me. And that's really where I feel like that implementation comes in, right? People who are like, I just want to pay for somebody to do this for me and make this all work the way I know that it can, so it can actually work to its full potential.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they want someone to handle that for them. They want to go in and like, paint that promised land, tell us this is everything we want HubSpot to do, and then hand it to them and say, okay, you guys do it. And then at the end, user adoption is key. We'll go in, we'll train your team how to do it. We'll build out training dashboards, and we can, utilizing, tools, with videos that we can embed, or tangos to kind of show people how to navigate within that system. So having someone like completely do it for them and then train their entire team is the ideal use case for a custom implementation setup.
Awesome. So the TLDR here is, if you're somebody who wants to do all of the things on your own, all you need is some simple onboarding. If you're somebody who wants it might just come back to like mowing the lawn, right? Like if you want to mow the lawn yourself and you take that pride, like you might be the person who just wants the onboarding. If you're like, no, I want this to look as beautiful as a Major League Baseball outfield when you're done, and I'm going to pay for it, then you're probably somebody who wants to do the implementation. Maybe too simple of an analogy, but I think it's worth it. Awesome. Well, hey, thanks so much, Stephen. I think this was great and a good way to break down what these two different things are, so that the customers understand which route they should take.
Yep, for sure. Thanks for having me.